It is a great pleasure and honor for me to introduce to you Tom Brokaw.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I am privileged indeed to be here as part of the final GERB Watch at the University of Washington. I am here in large part because I wanted to, in my own small way, pay tribute to this remarkable man who has served this institution so well. It's not always easy being the public president of an institution of higher learning, but I think that it's well known across the country that Bill Gerberding has done this with great distinction. I have often heard him described as being irreplaceable, but until I watched the Regents in the last year, I had no idea of the true meaning of that phrase. This is an unusual occasion. We have gathered on the stage here the Regents of the University of Washington in a rare public meeting. So you'll be happy to know as well that in the robing room, just before we all marched out here, they conferred, and came up with what I think is a rather imaginative approach to this conundrum of finding a new president of the University of Washington. I want all of you who are seated in this section and that section and this section to take note of your seat number. Later there will be a drawing, and one of you could be the new president of the University of Washington before this day is out. I want to pay special tribute to the parents, to the family, and the friends of the graduates who are here today. These are special occasions for you. You're not losing a son or a daughter. You're gaining a bank account. 2 years ago, the last of the Brokaw offspring finally graduated, this one from medical school, and one of my friends had a bumper sticker made for my pickup truck in Montana. It read, "Tuition free in '93, and it was a great sense of liberation that I had. I have an enormous affection for a Pac-8 school. Although I was not privileged to have a child at the University of Washington, I did have simultaneously one daughter at Cal Berkeley and another daughter at Stanford. It was a little bit like having one child who was a member of the Grateful Dead and another who was a member of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir at the same time. I want to pay tribute as well to Eric Novak. I tried to think what there was in my undergraduate career that was in any way parallel to what he has achieved here. And it did occur to me that when I took biology, it might as well have been in Swedish. I, too, had a perfect 4.0. Alas, mine was cumulative. Eric, congratulations, and we hope that you'll have a long and distinguished medical career. You're a great model to your students here. For those of you, however, who didn't quite measure up to Eric's academic standing, let you know as well that your speaker here today, in his graduating class, would have ranked somewhere up there in the last row of Section M, so there is hope after all. This is a great honor, a daunting challenge, and a lesson in humility for me. Here I stand, propped up by your expectations of wisdom and humor and, most of all, brevity. I am outwardly bold in my appearance, inwardly uncertain of my ability to fulfill those expectations, much less to keep you awake. However, we have all of us now reached the point of no return, so let us go forward together. Students and families, faculty and administrators, friends and creditors. We have lives to live, careers to pursue, passions not yet realized, wonders to behold, and parties to attend. I come to you today as a journalist, as a chronicler of change, an interpreter, often imperfect, of the currents of our time. It may have been my visibility, if not my achievements as a journalist, that prompted this invitation, but I want you to know as well that I am also here today as husband, father, and citizen. That is the four-part harmony of my life. They are complementary, and I would feel inadequate without one or another of those parts. I have been at these various roles for more than 30 years now. Age alone does not mean wisdom, but even the most casual observer picks up some patterns along the way. What I have learned is that history does not always follow our calendar or our cadences. It has a way of shocking us or surprising us, extracting a terrible price in the process. We have been witness to that again recently in the heart of Europe, the heart of Africa, the heart of Japan, and in Oklahoma City, in the heart of America. Of course, we have also been witness to the pleasant surprises of history, the liberation of Eastern Europe and what was called the Soviet Union, the liberation of South Africa, the flickering glow of political and economic democracy in South America, the uncertain but growing sense that the political ideals of the Age of Enlightenment can be realized in the East and the South, as well as in the West. The next class of undergraduates to enter the University of Washington will be the last to graduate before the millennium. You have the advantage of a running start. That alone makes this gathering worthwhile. Think about it. You have a whole new century to play in, to shape to your interest and to the benefit of others. Moreover, you have at your disposal a dazzling assortment of new tools not even imagined not so long ago. The gee-whiz tools of communications and information, cable television and satellites and cell phones and pagers and faxes, and of course the king of them all, the personal computer. A spellbinding galaxy of chips and binaries, codes, nets, bytes, and bits, all lighting up the information superhighway with infinitely more stimuli than all of the strobe lights at all the heavy metal concerts in the world. Email and chat rooms, virtual reality and all-color graphics, software, hardware, and caller waiting. Who could ask for anything more? And just think, not too far from here, an American genius has built an enormously successful business and made himself fabulously rich from all of this. He did that as a Harvard dropout. You're already well ahead of him. You have a Washington degree. And so let the word go forth, Bill Gates. The footsteps you hear are these eager young graduates. They are hot on your trail and they're closing in. Well, a modest suggestion as you lead us into the new century and this new age of information overload, data exchange, and 1-800-HELP from the fast lane of this new infobahn. This could become the cyberspace equivalent of a teenage joyride, reckless and pointless unless we all apply the first lesson of technological revolutions to this one. They almost all have unexpected consequences, and they are most successful when as much effort and thought is applied to the use of the technology as to the development of it in the first place. If this new technology becomes simply another means of amusing ourselves, or simply speeding the transactions of commerce, or communicating simply for the sake of communication, then we will have failed. If this new technology becomes primarily the province of the privileged, leaving the underclasses to wander in cyber wilderness, then we will have failed. If it becomes merely an instrument of greater invasion into our personal lives, then we will have failed. We will have failed as well if we are not vigilant about the dissemination of unfiltered, incendiary information and misinformation, the internet version of crying fire in a crowded theater. That, of course, is a vigilance that transcends cyberspace, a vigilance that seems to have gone out of favor somehow. We have allowed benign neglect to be the gatekeeper for language and attitude and comportment in our society. In our treatment of each other, in our popular culture, in our most popular medium of mass communication, in our politics, the arena that touches us all, we have lowered the thresholds of civility and tolerance, and we have replaced them with the raised voices of gratuitous denigration and intolerance. Daytime television has become an electronic form for the kinds of people the society was once free to dismiss as trash, with no greater interest in their cheap and mindless disputes. The petty dysfunctional now has become the electronic icon. Cato Kalin, a material witness in a brutal double murder, has become the boy toy of people who should know better. It took a horrific bombing in our midst for this country to re-examine the place and the values of some of the language and especially extremist talk radio. Just as the reckless rhetoric of the left in the 1960s could not be separated from the acts of that time, neither can the extremists who have found profit in the other end of the political spectrum be excused this time. They did not personally light any long fuses, and they should not be denied the First Amendment protections that enrich my life and yours. But just as we expect our judgments and our declarations to be critically reviewed for fact, merit, and effect, so should they. Popular music, film, and television commercials, three of the most powerful influences of the young of our time, are now heavily laced with the arsenic of confrontation and the intimation of violence and not the fact. The political playing fields of America too often more closely resemble WrestleMania, those contrived television matchups in which fakery and bombast and costuming count for more than talent and skills dependent on strength and strategy. In too many campaigns for high office in our land these days, dialogue and discourse have disappeared, replaced by the cheapest of the soundbite demagoguery of our time. Alas, the language and the dialogue of political journalism at too many levels is afflicted with the same cancerous genes. We're better than this, or we should be. These patterns have consequences. If we allow the lowest common denominators to set the pace and rhythms of our lives, we will lose our way. If we fail to engage each other in first a dialogue and then in a common commitment to standards of excellence, if we fail to honor, tolerance, and compassion, then we will have squandered opportunities other young people in other societies can only imagine. There is a place in America to begin to make a stand. I believe in it passionately. I am a product of it. It is the great leveler of American society. You are a product of it. It is public education. It is the underpinning Public education is no less than the underpinning of our cultural and political system. It is the great common ground. Public education is the engine that moves the society forward toward a common destiny. It is in desperate need of overhaul and renewed maintenance. Plainly, we should reserve for ourselves the right to choose educational institutions that add other values, religious or social or cultural. However you choose to educate your children, you should not forego your obligation as a citizen to the place of public education. It is in public education that the American dream begins to take shape. In too many places in our land, in the inner cities, public education has become an armed warehouse where the dream has become a nightmare of violence and indifference. In too many neighborhoods in America, the American dream now is a myth, a distant and unreachable goal, separate from the objective realities of inferior schools and dangerous streets, broken families, and persistent racism. Your generation will have no greater challenge than the challenge of racial harmony and tolerance in 21st century America. We are increasingly, as you are witness and testimony to that here today, a land of many colors, a geography of Asian and Latino and African hues against a diminishing backdrop of European stock. If we allow racism, expressed either as utter bigotry or dressed up as excessive ethnic pride, to metastasize at the current rates, we'll soon find ourselves at an incurable stage, unable to build walls high enough, schools private enough, industries insulated enough to withstand the ravages of this disease. If we allow ourselves to become tribal America, divided deeply by race, judging each other only by slights and stereotypes and shifting standards, then we will be less than the sum of our parts. There is no software to show us the way, no delete button for bigotry wherever it appears in the racial screen. It requires instead that most basic and yet most vexing human condition, an open mind and an open heart. It's easy to make a buck. It's tough to make a difference. We're living through what I call the age of anxiety, a time when we're navigating without compasses through new territories. All the old markers have been swept away by the winds of change. There's no longer a bipolar world, east and west, Washington and Moscow, the two great nuclear powers dividing up the world in a tidy but dangerous fashion. The global economy now has stripped America's sense of economic smugness. We remain the great locomotive that drives that new economy, but this engine is much less dependent now on workers who could only offer a strong back and good hands and a good attendance record. Our institutions are under strain, government, family, faith. Their place in our lives is more complex than it was when your parents or grandparents were coming of age. Some of that is the result of size or new pressures or both. But whatever the cause, no society can thrive or endure, especially a society in which there are so many moving parts, if there is no connective institutional strength. This great university and what you have achieved together is a tribute to that truth. Your degree from this institution is a passport of the privileged. It takes you almost automatically into the higher strata of the universe in which you live. Think of it as more than that, however. Think of it as a ticket to a new revolution in American life, a revolution in standards in which we raise the thresholds of excellence, not lower them. A revolution that reignites the old themes of democracy, the dignity of all of the people, not just rich people or educated people or white people, but all of the people. Your immediate concerns, understandably, are jobs and careers and relationships. Indeed, they will remain the primary focus, for they are the heart of personal happiness and survival. However, your legacy, the measurements by which your time will be marked, will be the values that you embrace. Society is taking new shapes all the time, gender as well as ethnic. Young men, these women who are in your midst today are in a passage of historic proportions. You should share their excitement and encourage their determinations. You should come to know and appreciate their world. And you must know as well that fathering a child is a daily and lifetime commitment. Young women, you must remember that life is also about proportion and choice. Motherhood is not incidental to a lifetime of fulfillment. To all of you, know this: there is no richer life than the one that you will lead together with common values and common respect for each other's special qualities, whatever the gender. 50 years ago, this spring, 1945, another generation of young Americans marked a special time in their lives. Together with the British and other Western allies, and especially the Russians, they had just won the war against one of the great menacing forces in the history of mankind, Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany. They were about to do the same against imperialist Japan. They did no less than save the world. Captain Scott F. O'Grady, fresh out of the woods of Bosnia, is their direct descendant. These people, however, were born in the Roaring '20s, and they came of age in the Great Depression when all was bleak and without much hope. They were then asked to leave their homes, most of them for the first time, and travel thousands of miles away to fight, often hand-to-hand in primitive conditions, history's greatest war machine. And they won. They prevailed. Then they came home, and they built the America that we know today. They kept the peace. They went to college in historic proportions. They married and they had families. They built great industries and small businesses. They gave us great universities and great highway systems. They integrated America. They found new cures, and they gave us new songs. And they didn't whine, and they didn't whimper. I am in awe of them. 50 years from now, let another commencement speaker stand here and say of your generation, they saved their world. I am in awe of them. You have work to do. Good luck.